So we all know the Trump administration is incredibly corrupt. Let's just look at the cabinet. We've had so many cabinet members under the Trump administration. Scott Pruitt, one of them. We had Tom Price, another one. All these resignations from these ethical scandals, right? Now, I reported earlier that the Democrats are starting to run on, hey, let's clean up the corruption. Let's get the Republicans out. Now, I was a little bit, skeptical, I should say, because there's a lot of issues with the Democratic Party, and being completely honest, they have also issues with corruption, whether it be Bob Menendez, who, had problems with corruption, and other people that have also resigned with corruption, although not recently, of course, but throughout the last decade or so. And of course, you have mainstream corruption, which isn't even considered corruption anymore, but that's the issue of money in politics and taking money from corporations. Now, Democrats, at least some of them, the new wave of progressives is actually swearing off corporate money, and they've gotten some of the other Democrats to also swear off that money. So that's actually a good thing, as long as they, of course, stay true to that and avoid taking big donations and big checks from corporate from corporate PACs and other big money groups. Now, I want to get to a poll here about this corruption and still this corruption issue and how it actually might help Democrats come the midterm. Now, according to a recent poll, this is a poll of 1,200 registered voters conducted for the Progressive Center for American Progress Action Fund. They found that 54% of voters across 48 Republican-held congressional districts said that they believe Republicans are actually now more corrupt than Democrats. Now, that's 54% compared to 46 that say the Democrats are more corrupt. So that's fascinating. Now, Jesse Lee, spokesman for the CAP, the Progressive Policy Group that commissioned the GBA Strategies poll, and let me just be clear about this. The Center for American Progress, that's the Neera Tanden group, right? So they're not actually progressive. They're actually more of your centrist third way group, right? So they're the centrist corporatist group. So it is kind of funny how they're being referred to in this article from Politico as a progressive group. They're not a progressive group. And it is kind of hilarious how they're talking about corruption when a lot of centrist Democrats are the ones that are taking money from big corporations. So just keeping that real, right? But anyway, Jesse Lee, spokesman for the CAP, said the fact that you have these recurring cabinet scandals, the fact that it keeps happening over and over again, it registers. People understand it's been taken to a whole new level. There's no check on it anymore. Trump isn't pushing back on Congress to keep it under control. Congress isn't pushing back on Trump. Why? It's because they're authoritarians. That's why. They're the authoritarian right. Now, look, you don't have to be right-wing or left-wing to be an authoritarian. Authoritarians are authoritarians. They can come in any flavor. In this case, a lot of the Republicans are massive authoritarians, which explains why they never push back on Trump on corruption, is because they engage in that same corruption. Hey, if Trump can do it, so can I. But anyway, now, the article notes that the corruption framing today takes a different shape than when they tried it back in 2006, when it largely revolved around the behavior of Republican members of Congress. Now the focus is on Trump cabinet members who resigned under an ethics cloud, including, of course, Scott Pruitt and Tom Price. Now, the current messaging also looks to portray the GOP tax plan as riddled with loopholes and benefiting only the wealthy. That's the same plan Republicans are holding up in their re-election campaigns as a major achievement. Well, it is a major achievement when it comes to their donors. Their donors love this tax plan. That's because 83% of the gains went to the rich. It was a plan sold to middle America, sold to the middle class, As no, it's going to help you. It's going to be more jobs. It's going to be better pay. Everything's going to be great. The economy is going to be amazing. Oh, wait. Is that happening? Well, we've got a nail company that's shedding jobs. In fact, we've had a lot of companies that shed jobs. And what did they use the tax cuts on? They bought back their own stock. So they bought back their own stock, their own shares, which increases, of course, executive compensation because they are mainly compensated in stock. They artificially inflate their value instead of spending it on workers, instead of raising wages. Now, look, if you want to run on that, that is perfect. That is a perfect way to frame the Republican tax cuts. Look at what they've done with the money. Republicans said it was going to trickle down. Do you see it trickling down? Is it trickling down to you? Are you getting more money? Are you being paid significantly more? Or are your wages still stagnant? I saw another recent report where inflation basically wiped out any and all wage gains this year. You're making the same as you have before. I thought those tax cuts were going to help you. They didn't help you because they weren't meant to help you. They were meant to help the donors. And so that's great messaging because that hits to the economic issues. And yes, it's not just white working class people that care about economic issues. It's everybody who works. It's minorities. They care about that too because they're also relying on these paychecks. They're also seeing their wages stagnate. They're also seeing home prices that are too unaffordable. They're also seeing student loans that are unaffordable. Run on those issues. Run on those issues. Now, the corruption issue I think is really important, but right now I still believe that they're avoiding the biggest corruption issue, and that is money in politics. You've got to get the money out of politics. That is the only way to end the corruption. But anyway, as far as this poll goes, they continue. The internet-based studies showed voters had a high level of familiarity with Trump's cabinet and showed particular frustration when asked about politicians spending on taxpayer money and perks for themselves, or when they make policies that help their big campaign donors. That is also really important. Now, look, we can talk about how Scott Pruitt spent $1,500 on pairs of tactical pants, which is ridiculous and a gigantic waste of money. And I think it is important to talk about. But that second thing, when politicians who are given money start to make policies that help their donors, that is something that I think resonates with the American people. So as far as that strategy goes, that is also a sound strategy. Now, a majority of voters, 56%, also said that congressional Republicans are not doing enough oversight of the Trump administration, and a number that's even higher among independents, at 57%, say the same thing. Now, the polling also suggests that the tax cuts are an area ripe for exploitation. Of those surveyed, 75% responded that it was serious or very serious, that 53 Republicans in Congress would get an average tax cut of over $200,000 each from a single loophole they added to the tax bill at the last minute. Look, it's not just tax loopholes that are in this. And by the way, I thought the whole point was, well, we're going to close the loopholes and then we're going to lower the rates and we'll still come out the same. That's not what happens. It never happens that way. But it's not just that, of course. It's just the whole point of the tax cuts was to give giant corporations, giant donors, more and more money. In fact, the average member of the top 1% saved without any of these, just in base level on their tax rates alone, saved an average of $63,000 a year. So, run on those issues. Run on those issues of economics. You're getting shafted by the Republicans, by their policies. And if you don't want to get shafted, we need to go left. But it's not just that. Run on healthcare. Healthcare is really important as well. Run on Medicare for all. It's 60%. That's how much it polls at. Run on free college. Run on a lot of these issues. That corruption angle, I think, is effective, but you also need to point out what you can actually do for the American people. Not just, yes, we're going to stop the corruption, but we're going to stop the corruption and we're going to actually implement policies that help you, that help regular working Americans get more for their tax money, get something in return for their tax money. Okay. Now, before I go and end that story, I want to give you the Republican response to this. You're going to like this, right? They said some study by liberal swamp creatures won't be enough for Democrats to avoid defending their embrace of the socialist left. It's not enough to wash with voters who are seeing the results of Trump's policies. That's Dennis Lennox, a Michigan-based Republican operative. Well, he says, right now, people have made their mind up. Either you like the president or you don't like the president. There's no in between. Either you like your congresswoman or you don't like your congressman. The battle lines are pretty well drawn. Now, we'll have to see if that happens, but I love that, right? Oh, they're embracing the socialist left. I'm assuming he means Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who won by a massive 15 points in her primary against establishment Joe Crowley. Now, Joe Crowley represents the corruption in Washington. His main reason for being there is to raise money from corporations, to raise money from giant donors, and then to give it to other Democratic politicians. That's all he was good at. And that's why he was the number 4 Democrat in the House. He was good at raising money. That's the corruption, right? Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, her socialist left leanings crushed that. You know why? Because she's actually against the corruption, right? She wants to see things like Medicare for all, which again is super popular. She wants to see things like college, public university that is tuition free, a higher minimum wage, protecting LGBT folks, making sure to protect Social Security, to go against war, to run on something called the peace economy, instead of what we have as a war economy. These are all incredibly popular policies. The most controversial would be and the one that actually isn't popular, the only one that isn't popular, is abolishing ICE. And that's because most people don't understand that ICE is not necessary for border security. It was created in 2003 under the Homeland Security Act. Not necessary since we had border security before. So, nonetheless, they want to paint us as the swamp creatures. No, it's not the progressives that are swamp creatures. Progressives are trying to drain both the neoliberal and the conservative swamp. And if you're trying to misrepresent that, well, then it says a lot about who you are and what you actually think about the swamp. Because right now, the swamp is only getting bigger and only swampier. Hey, everybody. Thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.